The Great Hall of the alien empire was larger than any city on Earth. Its ceiling stretched so high that it disappeared into glowing golden light. Tall pillars, made of smooth metal and crystal, stood like silent giants on both sides. Strange symbols moved slowly across their surface, shining like living stars. The floor was polished like a mirror, reflecting everything with perfect clarity. But the most powerful thing in the hall was not the gold. It was the silence. Thousands of beings stood in perfect rows. They came from different worlds. Some were tall and thin, with glowing blue skin. Others were massive, with armored bodies and burning red eyes. Some had wings, some had claws, some did not even look solid. Each one was powerful. Each one had conquered planets. And yet, none of them spoke. No one dared to. Because this was not just any place. This was the royal court of the Galactic Empire, a place where worlds were judged, a place where civilizations lived or died. And today, something unusual was happening. In the very center of the hall, standing alone, was a single figure, a human. He looked small compared to the others, weak, fragile, no armor, no weapons, no protection, just simple clothes. But his face, it was calm, too calm. His name did not matter to the court. To them, he was just a representative of a weak species, a species that had barely reached the stars, a species that should have surrendered the moment the Empire arrived. Humans, the weakest species in the galaxy, or so everyone believed. The Empire had crushed thousands of worlds before. Advanced civilizations had fallen in days. Powerful armies had surrendered in hours. No one resisted for long. That was the rule of the galaxy. Survival meant obedience. And yet, humans had done something different. They had fought back, not well, not successfully, but they did not surrender. That alone made them strange. And now this one human stood in the center of the most dangerous place in the galaxy, without fear. Many eyes were watching him. Some aliens looked at him with amusement, some with anger, some with curiosity, a few with something close to respect. But no one understood him. A low whisper moved through the crowd. Why is he so calm? Does he not understand where he is? Is he foolish or brave? The whispers grew slightly louder, like a soft wind passing through the court. Then suddenly, silence. Not normal silence, absolute silence. Every being stopped moving at the same time. Every head lowered. Every body bent in respect, because she had arrived. At the far end of the hall, a massive golden door slowly opened. A bright light poured in, and from that light, she stepped forward. The alien queen. She was tall, elegant, and terrifying. Her armor shined like liquid gold, perfectly shaped to her body. Lines of soft energy moved across it, glowing with quiet power. A crown rested on her head, not just decoration, but something more, something alive with ancient technology. Her long dark hair flowed behind her like a shadow. Her eyes, they were not just eyes. They were sharp, glowing, and filled with something far beyond emotion. Power. Pure, unquestioned power. With each step she took, the sound echoed across the hall. Slow, controlled, final. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the strongest warriors in the court kept their heads down. All except one, the human. He did not bow. He did not look away. He stood exactly as he was and watched her walk toward him. That was when the whispers returned, this time sharper, more nervous. He is not bowing. Does he want to die? Does he want to die? This is madness. Some aliens looked shocked. Others looked afraid for him. No one had ever done this before. No one had ever disrespected the queen and lived. The queen stopped walking. She now stood directly in front of the human, close enough to end his life in a single moment. The hall felt colder. Hearts, human and alien, seemed to stop at the same time. Slowly, the queen lifted her head and looked directly into his eyes. The human did not move. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Power, meeting something unexpected. Then finally, the queen spoke. Her voice was calm, soft, but it carried across the entire hall like thunder. She asked one question, just one. The moment the words left her lips, the entire court froze. Not one sound, not one movement. Some aliens widened their eyes in shock. Others stepped back slightly as if afraid of what would happen next. Even the strongest generals looked uneasy, because that question was not simple. It was not political. It was not about war. It was something else, something deeper, something dangerous. And now, all eyes turned to the human, waiting for his answer, because everyone in that hall understood one thing. That one question, could decide the fate of Earth. The silence did not break. It grew heavier. Every being in the royal court stood frozen, their eyes locked on the human. Even those who had seen entire civilizations fall now felt something strange, something they could not explain. The Queen's question still echoed in the air. No one repeated it. No one needed to. They had all heard it clearly, and now they were waiting for the human to answer. But the human did not speak. Not yet. He stood still, his eyes steady, his face calm. He looked at the Queen, not as a ruler, but as someone trying to understand her. That alone made the tension worse. A low murmur started again among the aliens. Why is he silent? Does he not understand the importance of this moment? Answering late is an insult. A tall, armored general stepped forward slightly. His voice was deep and filled with anger. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing his head, "this human delays. This is disrespect. Allow me to..." Silence. The Queen did not raise her voice. She did not even look at him. But the word alone was enough. The general stepped back instantly, lowering his head again. The entire court returned to silence. The Queen's eyes never left the human. She was watching him carefully, not like a ruler judging a prisoner, but like a mind studying a mystery. Finally, the human moved. He took a slow breath. Then he spoke. His voice was not loud, not powerful. But in that silent hall, it reached everyone. "You ask why humans fight, even when we know we will lose." A small pause. Some aliens shifted slightly. The human continued. "I could give you many answers." He looked around the court at the thousands of watching eyes, but I think none of them would make sense to you. A few aliens reacted with quiet anger. How dare he? But again, no one interrupted. The Queen allowed him to continue. The human looked back at her. "But I will try." He took another breath. "Humans are not strong." A few aliens smirked at that. "Not compared to you," he added calmly. "We are slower. We are weaker. Our technology is behind yours." He did not sound ashamed. He was simply stating the truth. "And yes, we know we cannot win." That made the court even more confused. "If you know you cannot win, then why resist?" Someone whispered. The human heard it. A faint, almost invisible smile appeared on his face. "Because winning is not always the reason we fight." That sentence spread through the court like a shockwave. Many aliens looked at each other. They did not understand. Fighting without the goal of winning? It made no sense. The Queen tilted her head slightly. Interested. The human continued. "When your empire came to Earth, we understood very quickly what would happen." He paused. "You were stronger, more advanced, more powerful in every way." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "But we also understood something else." The entire court leaned into silence again, that if we surrendered, we would lose something more important than our lives. Now the confusion turned into curiosity. What could be more important than survival? One alien whispered. The human answered, as if he had heard the thought. "Everything that makes us human." The words were simple, but they carried weight. Family, freedom, choice, the right to live our own way. He looked directly at the Queen. "You see weakness, but we see meaning." The court was completely silent now. No whispers, no movement, only listening. The human took a small step forward, not aggressive, not afraid, just certain. "We fight because we care." That word care felt strange in that place. Foreign, unfamiliar. We fight for people we love, for places we call home, for moments that matter only to us. He paused again. "And even if we lose, those things are still worth fighting for." A long silence followed. Some aliens lowered their eyes. Others looked uncomfortable. This was not how war was supposed to sound. This was not how logic worked. But somehow, it felt real. The Queen watched him without blinking. For the first time, there was something new in her expression. Not anger, not power, something deeper, understanding, or the beginning of it. The human finished quietly. "So you ask why we fight?" He held her gaze. "We fight because not fighting would mean we are already gone." The words settled over the court like a final weight. No one laughed. No one argued, because no one had ever heard something like this before. The Queen remained still, thinking, watching, measuring something far beyond strength or weapons. And in that moment, the entire court realized something had changed. This was no longer about a weak species. This was something else, something dangerous, something new. And whatever the Queen decided next would not just affect one human, it would affect all of humanity. For a long moment, no one moved. The human's words still hung in the air, heavy and impossible to ignore. The court once filled with quiet judgment, now felt different, uncertain, uneasy. Many of the aliens avoided looking at the human. Others stared at him with narrowed eyes, as if trying to understand something that did not follow their rules. Because in this court, everything had always been simple. Power decided truth. Strength decided survival. But what the human had said did not fit into that system. At the center of it all stood the queen, still, silent, watching. Her glowing eyes remained fixed on the human, searching deeper than before. She was not just listening anymore, she was thinking. And that alone made the court nervous. A thin, tall figure stepped forward from the left side of the hall. Its skin shimmered like glass and its voice was sharp and cold. "Your Majesty," it said carefully, bowing low, "this is nothing but emotional weakness. The human speaks of feelings, not logic. Such thinking is dangerous but also useless." A few others nodded. "Yes," another added, "a species that values emotion over survival cannot last long. They will destroy themselves without our help." The murmurs slowly returned. Agreement spread quickly. This was familiar ground again. This was logic. This made sense. But the queen did not respond. Not to them. Instead, she took a single step forward, closer to the human. The sound of her movement echoed through the hall, and the whispers died instantly. She stopped just inches away from him now, close enough to see every detail of his face, close enough to end him with a thought. "You speak of things my court does not understand," she said calmly. Her voice was quiet, but it held the weight of absolute authority. The human did not step back. He did not lower his gaze. "I expected that," he replied. A few aliens reacted with shock. His tone was respectful, but not submissive. The queen studied him for another moment. Then she spoke again. "If what you say is true, then your kind fights without reason." The human shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We fight for reasons you cannot measure." That answer caused a ripple of discomfort. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Everything can be measured," she said. "Power, intelligence, survival probability." She paused. "These are the truths of the galaxy." The human gave a small, almost sad smile. "Maybe," he said, "but not all truths matter the same." That was new. Even the highest-ranking beings in the court shifted slightly. No one spoke to the queen like this, not even allies. And yet, she did not stop him. Instead, she asked another question, not loud, not dramatic, but even more dangerous than the first. "If your kind knows it will suffer, knows it will lose, then why does it not choose to live quietly under stronger rule?" The court leaned into the silence again. This was the true question, not just about war, but about existence. The human took a moment before answering. He looked around the hall one more time, at the powerful beings, at the endless rows of obedience, at the perfect order of the empire. Then he looked back at the queen. "Because that would not be living," he said simply. The words hit harder than expected. Some aliens frowned. Others looked confused. The queen remained still. The human continued. "You see survival as the highest goal," he said. "We don't." That statement alone felt like a challenge to the entire empire. "We believe living means making choices," he added. "Even bad ones, even dangerous ones." He took a slow breath. "If someone else controls everything, then what is left of us?" The court had no answer. Because that question had never been asked before. Not here, not in this place. The queen's gaze softened, just slightly. "So you would rather risk extinction than accept control?" "Yes." The answer came without hesitation, without fear, without doubt. That was the moment something shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but deeply. The queen turned slightly, looking out over her court. Thousands of powerful beings stood before her, perfectly loyal, perfectly controlled, perfectly predictable. Then she looked back at the human, uncontrolled, unpredictable, unbreakable in a way that had nothing to do with strength. For the first time in a very long time, the queen felt uncertainty, and that made the court uneasy. Because if the queen was uncertain, then nothing was truly stable. A low voice rose again from the ranks. "This is dangerous thinking," a commander said. "If other species hear this, it could spread. Rebellion could grow." "Yes," another agreed. "Humans must be eliminated before this idea spreads." More voices joined. "Stronger now. Fear hidden behind logic. End this now. Destroy Earth. Remove the threat." The pressure in the room began to build. All eyes turned back to the queen, waiting, expecting, demanding a decision. But the queen did not rush. She looked at the human one last time, long, careful, as if weighing something far greater than war. And in that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath, because whatever she decided next would not just define the fate of one small planet, it would define what kind of empire she truly ruled. The court was no longer calm. It was controlled, but not calm. A quiet tension moved through the massive hall like an unseen storm. The golden light still shined, the pillars still stood tall, and every being remained in place. But something inside the room had changed. Doubt. It was small, weak, almost invisible, but it was there, and that alone made it dangerous. At the center, the human still stood before the queen. No chains, no guards holding him down, just a single man, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. And yet, he did not look like the weakest one anymore. The queen turned away from him slowly. Her gaze moved across the court. Thousands of loyal subjects stood ready for her command. Generals, rulers, conquerors, beings who had never questioned her authority until now. Humans are a threat, one of the high generals said again, stepping forward. His armor reflected the golden light, sharp and cold, not because of their strength, but because of their thinking. Others nodded. This idea of fighting without logic, without calculation, it spreads chaos. It breaks order. It cannot be allowed. Without calculation, it spreads chaos. It cannot be allowed. The voices were calm, but beneath them was something deeper, fear, not fear of war, but fear of change. The queen listened. She did not interrupt. She let every word settle into the silence. Then, slowly, she raised her hand. The entire court fell quiet instantly. No more voices, no more movement, only her. She turned back to the human. "You speak of choice," she said, "of freedom." Her voice was steady, but now it carried something new. Curiosity. "Tell me, human," she continued, "has your kind always believed this?" The human thought for a moment. Then he shook his head. "No," he said, "not always." That answer surprised many. The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. "Explain." The human took a slow breath. "Humans have fought each other for a long time," he said. "Wars, control, power." He looked down briefly, as if remembering something heavy. "We have tried to dominate each other, to force others to live a certain way." A few aliens nodded. That made sense. That was familiar. "But," the human continued, "we also learned something from those mistakes." The court grew quiet again. "We learned that control creates resistance," he said, "that people will always fight back, even if they lose." He looked back at the queen, not because they think they will win, but because they refuse to be owned. The word owned echoed strangely in the hall. It felt sharp, uncomfortable. The queen stepped closer again. "And you believe your entire species would choose this?" she asked. "Even knowing the cost?" The human did not hesitate. "Yes, no fear, no doubt, just certainty." That answer hit harder than any weapon, because it meant something very clear. Humans would never fully submit, no matter the power against them. The queen turned slightly again, her thoughts moving quickly now. A species that could not be controlled, a species that accepted loss, a species that fought for something beyond survival. That was not weakness. That was something far more dangerous. The court began to feel it too. "This is exactly why they must be destroyed," a commander said quickly. "They cannot be controlled. They will always resist. They will inspire others. They will weaken the empire." More voices joined, stronger now, more urgent. "End this now. Give the order. Destroy Earth. Dis now. Give the order. Destroy Earth before it spreads." The pressure was rising again, but this time it felt different. It was not just logic speaking. It was fear trying to protect itself. The queen raised her hand once more. Silence returned instantly. She stood still for a long moment. Then she spoke. "If we destroy every species that thinks differently," she said slowly, "what remains?" The question stunned the court. No one answered, because the answer was clear. Only sameness, only obedience, only silence. The queen looked across the hall, at her perfect empire, at its flawless order, at its absolute control, and for the first time, it looked incomplete. Her gaze returned to the human. "You are weak," she said. "No anger, just truth." The human nodded. "I know, but you are also," she paused slightly, choosing the word carefully, "unbreakable." The court reacted instantly. Shock, confusion, disbelief. No one had ever heard the queen describe a weaker species that way. The human said nothing. He simply stood there. The queen stepped back. Her decision was forming now, slowly, clearly, and everyone could feel it. This moment would change something, not just for Earth, but for the entire empire. The tension reached its peak, every eye fixed on her, every mind waiting, every breath held, and then she spoke. The moment had come. No one in the court moved. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. The air itself felt heavy, as if the entire hall was waiting for a single word. The queen stood at the center, her golden armor glowing softly under the light. Her expression was calm, but her decision carried the weight of worlds. Thousands of eyes were locked on her. Generals, conquerors, rulers of destroyed civilizations. All waiting, all expecting the same outcome: destruction. It was the natural order of the empire. A species that could not be controlled was removed. Simple, clean, final. The human stood before her, unchanged, no fear, no anger, just quiet acceptance. He knew what this moment meant. He knew what usually happened in this court. But still, he did not bow. The queen looked at him one last time. Then she turned to face the entire court. Her voice echoed across the massive hall. "Release him." For a second, no one reacted. The words did not make sense. Some thought they had heard wrong. Then the meaning hit. Shock spread through the court like a wave. A low murmur exploded into whispers. "Release him? That's impossible. Did she say release? This cannot be real." Even the highest generals looked stunned. One of them stepped forward quickly, unable to stay silent. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice tight with tension. "This is a mistake." The queen did not look at him. "This human represents a dangerous idea," the general continued. "If we allow him to return, his kind will grow stronger. Their thinking will spread. Rebellion will follow. More voices joined him. They cannot be controlled. They will never submit. They will infect other species with this thinking. End them now before it is too late." The pressure in the room was rising again, but this time it was desperate. The queen slowly turned her head. Her eyes fell on the general, just one look, and he went silent. The entire court followed. Absolute silence returned. Then she spoke. "That is exactly why they will not be destroyed." The words hit harder than before. Confusion spread even deeper now. The queen stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "A species that cannot be controlled is not weak." She paused. "It is dangerous." No one dared to interrupt. No one dared to question. But inside, many disagreed. The queen continued, "You fear them because they do not follow our rules." Her gaze moved across the court. "You fear them because they cannot be predicted." A long pause. "Then, you fear them because you cannot understand them." That truth cut deep. No one responded, because no one could deny it. The queen turned back toward the human, and that is why they must not be erased. The human remained still, listening, watching. The queen's voice softened slightly. "A predictable enemy can be defeated." She took another step, "but an unpredictable one must be studied." Now the meaning became clear. Not mercy, not kindness, something else. Interest. The court began to understand. She was not sparing humanity. She was choosing to observe them, to learn, to watch what they would become. The queen raised her hand slightly. "From this moment," she declared, "Earth is not to be attacked." Shock again, even stronger this time. Some aliens physically stepped back. Others looked at each other in disbelief. One commander could not hold back. "And if they grow stronger?" he asked. "If they become a real threat?" The queen answered without hesitation. "Then we will face them." Her tone was calm, certain, unshaken. "But we will not destroy something simply because we do not understand it." Silence followed, deep, heavy, final. The decision was made. The human's fate was decided. Earth's fate was decided. But more than that, something inside the empire had shifted. The queen looked at the human one last time. "For now," she said quietly, "your world remains." The human gave a small nod. Not as a servant, not as a subject, but as an equal in that moment. A silent understanding passed between them. Then guards stepped forward not to harm him, but to escort him away. The court watched in silence as the human walked out of the great hall, alive, unbroken, unbowed. And as the massive doors slowly closed behind him, No one spoke, because every being in that room knew one thing. This was not the end. This was the beginning. The great doors of the royal court closed slowly behind the human. The sound echoed through the massive hall, then faded into silence. No one moved, no one spoke, but something had changed. The human was gone, yet his presence remained, like a question no one could answer. The queen stood at the center, her expression calm, but her thoughts far from still. Around her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy stood in perfect order, yet for the first time, that order felt uncertain. A general finally stepped forward again, more careful this time. "Your Majesty," he said, lowering his head, "the human has been released. Our fleets await your next command." The queen did not answer immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze toward the far end of the hall, where the doors had closed. "Send observers," she said at last. The court listened closely. "Not soldiers," she continued, "not conquerors." A small pause. "Watch them." The words were simple, but their meaning was not. The general frowned slightly. "Observe, humans?" he asked. Yes, the queen's voice was steady. "We will not interfere." This caused another wave of quiet reaction. Not attack, not control, just watch. It was something the Empire had never done before. The queen began to walk slowly across the hall. Each step echoed, controlled and calm. "They are weak," she said again, as if reminding herself, "but they endure." She stopped near one of the massive pillars, her glowing eyes reflecting its light. "They lose and still continue." Her voice lowered slightly. "They know defeat and still resist." No one interrupted, because now they were beginning to understand. The queen turned back toward the court. "Power is not only measured in strength," she said. Some lowered their heads. Others listened more carefully than ever before. "A species that survives through force can be broken by greater force." She paused. "But a species that survives through will," a longer pause, "cannot be easily destroyed." Silence followed, deep and thoughtful. For the first time, many in the court were not thinking about war. They were thinking about meaning. Far away, beyond the Empire's reach, a small blue planet continued to turn in silence. Earth. The human ship returned quietly. No celebration waited for him. No victory. Only questions. When he stepped back onto his world, he looked up at the sky, at the stars, at the place where the Empire watched. He knew they were out there. He knew this was not over. But he also knew something else. Humanity had been seen, truly seen, not as weak, not as prey, but as something different. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Across the galaxy, small observation ships moved silently through space, hidden, watching. They studied Earth. They watched humans live their lives. They saw families laugh. They saw people struggle. They saw wars, but also kindness. They saw loss and how humans still moved forward. Report after report returned to the queen. Each one said the same thing in different ways. Humans were not efficient, not logical, not perfect, but they were persistent and unpredictable. One report stood out. A simple line. "They continue even when there is no reason to continue." The queen read it more than once, then she looked out into the endless stars. For a long time she said nothing. Back in the court, things had changed. Not loudly, not openly, but slowly. Questions began to appear. Small ones, quiet ones. Some began to wonder. Was control the only way? Was obedience the same as strength? The Empire did not fall. It did not weaken, but it began to think, and that was new. Far below, on Earth, the human who stood before the queen lived a simple life again. No one called him a hero. No one knew what had truly happened. But sometimes he would look at the sky and remember. The question, the silence, the moment everything could have ended, and the moment it didn't. He would smile slightly, not because they had won, but because they had not given up. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, a queen watched, not with fear, not with anger, but with interest, because she had learned something no ruler in her empire had ever understood before. That true strength is not the power to conquer, but the will to stand, even when you cannot win.